Hello, everyone. Welcome to our inaugural DigITea talk. So thank you so much to everybody who's attending here today. And my thanks to Cara as well for being our constant guardian and light in helping us organize this session. So thank you very much, and all sessions. So I'll just start with an introduction before we ask Peter to continue. So basically, it's a real pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Peter McKeague, who's the Spatial Information Manager at Historic Environment Scotland. He has been a leading figure in the heritage sector for over 20 years, working across a career in archaeological survey, digital archiving, and the development of spatial data infrastructures that help us better understand our historic environments. So his work has had a lasting impact on how we collect, manage, and share geospatial information, both within HES and across the wider UK heritage and geospatial communities. He's also a regular contributor to national and international conversations on open data, accessibility, and digital transformation in cultural heritage. So what Peter is here to talk to us today about is the CHRoMA project, for which he is a key contributor, which is the Cultural Heritage Review and Map Accessibility. And this addresses how colour vision deficiency affects the interpretation of colour maps, of archaeological maps. The project not only proposes a colour vision friendly thematic key, but also champions greater interoperability and accessibility of survey data across the sector. So today, Peter is going to talk us through more about the project, exploring the challenges, the solutions, and wider implications for digital practice and heritage. Please join me in welcoming Peter. Thank you, Peter.
All right, I'm going to try and share my screen. It's always a...
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, can you see the screen? Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much for that introduction, Laura. I'd like to say quite a lot of that still aspirational, as you may may become apparent in this talk. So yeah, so I've worked for what was the Royal Commission in Historical Monuments of Scotland, and then Historic Environment Scotland on archaeological survey, recording, data management. One of the biggest challenges I found is being able to collate the information that describes the site through mapping. So I work with colleagues in our office. We have teams who look to undertake field survey, undertake aerial photographic mapping, airborne mapping. Generally follow a standard for each methodology. I want to be able to combine the methodologies from those the data from those two methodologies to have a single map of the observed archaeological information across Scotland. So that's the sort of the idea behind the project, was how do we combine that data, and then came out with conversations with colleagues as well about colour blindness, and that the use of what's called rainbow colours, primary colours, is a major barrier to accessibility. So this project is developed to address those issues. I'm not colorblind. I rely on data on colorblind emulators to visualize how somebody would see the data. So we found Fabio Cameri, who's runs an undertone design company, who specializes in data color science, particularly for scientific mapping. And there's a bit of semantic work as well, which relies on the skills of Kerry Banding, Doug Tudhope, University of South Wales, who are long-standing heritage collaborators through the Form of Information Standards in Heritage, and they've done some semantic modelling for me. So yeah, this works. So just a quick introduction. So I'm going to outline the challenge. The challenge comes in two parts. One's trying to find the colours, the other is looking at the data, and then looking at the solution to that part of the challenge, accessibility, where where Fabio has produced a colour palette, which we've called HERTA, which is the main village settlement on St Kilda. And then the rest of the presentation, probably 2/3 of it, will look at the interoperability of terminologies, look at the terminologies and thematic case studies. It's very linear rather than in a GIS. So it's a series of screenshots rather than being able to explore across the map. So looking at airborne mapping from our Inveresk, our Roman vicus and field systems, Neolithic cursus monuments, our abandoned settlement, if you like, at Hertha and St Kilda from our field survey. Fortunate enough to introduce my geophysics colleagues. We've just recently set up a geophysics team, and they very kindly shared their data from Hollywood South, Cursus Monument in Dumfries, and then nipping across, well, straddling the border, looking at data interoperability between the Historic Environment Scotland mapping and the Historic England aerial archaeology mapping on the Tweed Valley and at Stonehenge, and then briefly touching on applying a period legend to the same data using Inveresk and Bedford. And a couple of observations on data structure and observations findings from the project, if you like. So the main challenge is, according to colorblind.awareness.org, color vision deficiency, color blindness affects about 4.5% of the UK population, disproportionately more men than women, 1 in 12 men as opposed to 1 in 200 women. And as the screen shows, there's 4 main types of color blindness. People can't distinguish reds, no greens, no blues, no color. They've all got very fancy names I don't understand, but it affects how people view and perceive the information that we try and publish on a map. Mapping is considered exempt in web accessibility guidance, but that doesn't mean we can ignore this. We should still try and improve the presentation of the mapping and reach out to more people. We have a wealth of survey data. I have qualified this with HES survey data because when I was trying to find data from outside the organisation in Scotland, there's actually relatively little that's easily found in our archive. So I'm looking at our field survey data that's been collected since 1990 and our airborne mapping data as well, which was again first collected in the 1990s. There's about over 12,000 sites represented between those two. The only part of that data that's openly accessible, is openly viewable, visible, is the airborne mapping around Inveresk and the East Lothian. The rest of the data is still sitting in our network servers. It's a long-time concern of mine that they're sitting on the servers. They're not managed effectively. We want to be able to make sure that information is streamlined and managed efficiently for publication. So I also want to look at the geophysics survey data, and I'll just touch on the same methodology can be applied to intrusive events as well. So information from the excavation. These are all methodologies, techniques that inform about the archaeology. The common thread is the archaeology. So how do you present that archaeology? So trying to find a key that works for that. And I would add that it's looking at the data on an archaeological mapping scale, specifically on rural archaeology in Scotland. So just touch on the accessibility. The primary focus was on one aspect of accessibility and not the accessibility of FAIR data. It's about making the data we have more accessible to users in web maps and GIS. It's not referring to the identifiers and authorization protocols, FAIR data machine accessibility, but about web accessibility. So we started off the project looking at trying to visualize the issue. We used a tool, openly available website called colorblindness.com, Coblis, and you're able to just drop a screenshot of the image that you want to see, and then you can choose how it's visualized. So it's the standard view. No reds, no greens, no blues. You can see how others would perceive the data that you're trying to present using your map legend. It's further complicated by the fact that we're trying to show this information against a range of backgrounds. The standard backgrounds that we have on our websites are the suite of Ordnance Survey maps for going through from very generalized open data sets to highly specialized premium data sets such as OS Mastermind, and also the ortho imagery. Both of these map backgrounds are available to public sector bodies through public sector geospatial agreement. The OS and the company who serves the OS mapping to us via Europa have done a lot of work to address color vision within the background mapping. So we're already working in a very complicated color-rich environment. So it is really a challenge to show the information. I haven't been looking at background mapping for lighter visualizations where people set their own color schemes. That's just too complicated to approach. But looking at it for the standard map backgrounds that we use in our websites. Yeah, sorry, I want that. Yeah, so the brief is to develop a color palette to represent survey data against the mapping and author imagery backgrounds. The difficulty in the ask is how much interpretation do you want to provide to the archaeology data? We came up with 10 discrete color values, themes that we want to present the map. I would say that's almost double what the recommendation would be. 4 or 5 would be ideal, but then you lose part of the narrative. So the work that Fabio undertook was to, the work that Fabio undertook was to define a set of values to display these themes on. So he's created a categorical color palette. The reference to the hex codes in the image probably doesn't show up that well on screen. And you can see the standard color, and then how the no red, no green, no blue perceive those colors in the left-hand panel. And the right-hand panel test those colors against the most common map background colors. So varying degrees of success and confusion. We evaluated the legend through a survey, got 124 responses. Just 16.5% preferred the standard legend. That's what they're familiar with. 20% expressed no preference, and 63.5% preferred the proposed legend. The number of colorblind responses was about 1/10 of those, and reflected the similarity in the preferred or no preference. Some of the colorblind color vision options were quite difficult. There's we got some very rare conditions that we just couldn't have foreseen. So we're basically concentrating on the 3 main variants that I've described earlier. We're never going to find a single solution, but it's about improving the presentation, making the information more accessible. And my geophysics colleagues have certainly adopted the color scheme since then on their own record. They were skeptical at first because the colors are more muted or matte, and they don't stand out as well. But when they were showing them to other people, they were getting a favorable reaction. So it's a sort of oral vindication, I guess. As I say, the complexity is we're trying to tell too many stories in the legend. We're trying to explain, differentiate between domestic, agricultural settlement, land use boundaries, defense, military, transport, religious ritual monuments. It could be slimmed down, but the more you reduce the elements in the map that you want to display, the less clear the story that you want to tell through the landscape becomes. Colors work well individually against the background mapping, as I showed in the previous slide. However, when you look at the data, you apply the colors to the survey data. Quite a lot of the details quite close together, and you've got competing areas. So the pop-up shows a bit of the Inveresque area, showing settlement, land use, and cultivation. And some of the feedback on that was that is too complicated. The colors are too difficult to distinguish. I think when you're using the data in a GIS, you've got much more control as to you zoom in and pan around. You can probably get a better sense from that. But on a static image, it's the feedback was you need to look at the complex. I don't think we can address that. So yeah, so I'll just stop there and take any questions on the color side of the project. If anyone has any.
We have a question from Katie. can unmute.
Hello, hi. Thanks, Peter. This is fascinating. I should say I work in the aerial survey team at Historic England, so I was really keen to hear what you have to say here, because as I'm sure you know, we've been thinking about similar sorts of issues. Would it, the colour, have I got this right? So the colour, having 10 colour categories, is because you're trying to depict essentially information about monument types rather than, for example, evidence type, a different kind of category of information about the data that's presented. So
exactly that.
So A, have I got that right? And then B, so if I have got that right, thank you. The question is then, would you consider symbolizing the data by a different attribute?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I'll just put a button there.
Yeah.
Not with the data I have. I'll come on to that later. One of the case studies is the Tweed Valley, because it's the common border between England and Scotland. So we want a seamless map of the aerial archaeology, along the valley. Kind of makes sense. You want to see what the archaeology of the valley is, not by jurisdiction. So yeah, we want to be able to combine data sets, but I'll come on to that later.
Magic. Thanks.
Any other questions before we proceed?
Okay, carry on. Yeah, so the rest of this presentation is looking at the interoperability of the data set. So basically, it's looking at the interoperability between our own survey data sets in the first instance, and then applying it wider. So we want to apply the fair data principles to our data, so that the data can be machine readable. It's referencing a thesaurus, which is currently published on heritagedata.org, but does have persistent URLs for each term. And that helps with the sharing of interoperability. And for the purpose of this project, using that term allows us to apply the legend consistently to the mapping. The screenshot on the right is just the heritage data machine readable version of the term for a bar dwelling. Reason I chose bar dwelling is because it's an awkward thing that has both got domestic and agricultural settlement values. One half of the buildings used to live in, the rest of the bottom half's used for the cow house. This is the visualization of the heritage data definition on our Canmore website, and soon to be. Actually, I think it is live on the Trove website. Trove replaces Canmore by the end of June. But the point is, the terms still have a URL. They're still referencing back to the heritage data link persistent URL. So managing that URL means we've got a degree of persistency across data sets beyond whatever website we choose to publish our thesaurus on. And that I've highlighted in other bad primary red, I've underlined it. Bar dwelling sits under different classifications. It's an domestic, it's agricultural, and substance also categorized as monument by form. The other difficult about buildings is that they change function over time. So a dwelling may become may be converted into a store or bar, agricultural building in time. So applying a single monument classification doesn't really work in terms of mapping. You can't categorically say this is a domestic building, because that function changes use over time. So we set about mapping originally started out matching the terminologies within our survey data sets to the categories that we thought we'd want to publish to. So we took 2,000 instances of the terminologies and mapped them down to the legend. So you can see the amount of change in the colors on the right as terms are mapped to mainly buildings, so we'll show buildings rather than domestic buildings or agricultural or commercial buildings. Whereas in the bulk of the majority of industrial, say, maps straight across from the industrial hierarchy in the thesaurus. And that then drives how we code up and display the controls the map legend, so that the map legend is being applied consistently to the data sets. One thing I didn't do in the project was, between the narrow term and the top level term, a narrow term can have one or more broad classes as well, which is throwing extra confusion into how things were being mapped and presented in the original data sets. So so the key purpose is to interpret the archaeological landscape from our survey programs, mapping the individual terms to a value in the proposed legend theme. It's a thematic legend. So this is just an example showing the cord rig, lazy beds, plough marks. They're all types of cultivation. They then define those themes. Each has a high level, as a color value defined by hex code. There's still a problem with a minority of concepts which still map to more than one category. Military versus civil use. Context of the mapping is still essential and still requires human review. Colleagues at the University of South Wales, Kerry Banding, Doug Tudor, then modelled this semantically, and what we'll do is, with the Scottish Monument Thesaurus and Heritage Data, we'll add in a value to store the collection category against the value within the heritage, within our Monument Thesaurus and Heritage Data. I'll skip past these just to show that we have slides that look at them in Turtle RDF and Sparkle queries. So this is going to be a sort of rapid fire view of screenshots of the legend. So this is the Inveresk map in East Lothian, which shows a complex landscape from Neolithic through Roman and industrial. So can you see my cursor when I move it? Yeah. So we have Neolithic ritual monument, Cursus monument here. To the north of that is a brown land use field system, which is actually part of a Roman fort in Vicus, which is just sitting off screen the map. Also got cultivation, undated but probably Iron Age settlement, and then areas of industrial. So it's quite a complex landscape, and we want to be able to tell the stories, differentiate those different types of stories. That's partly the reason why we have up to 10 values. We can also apply the same legend to our field survey data. So this is the village bay in St Kilda, showing the townships and earlier phases of townships, and a detail on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, showing industrial landscape, Wilson Town and Ironworks in the central belt of Scotland. When we displayed the data over the ortho imagery, one of the feedbacks I got from users was the background imagery is too dark. So we can adjust the opacity of the background imagery, and if the browser that you're viewing the data against is allows you to do that, you can set the opacity to your own preferences. As I also looked at the geophysics data. This is I'm very grateful to my colleagues McCann, Hazel, Blake for sharing the data ahead of their publication. This is the existing airborne mapping at Hollywood South in Dumfriesshire. You've got the Hollywood South Cursus, the grey areas, the geophysics extent. You've got Hollywood North and various other parts of the landscape mapped from our airborne mapping. So the idea is that the geophysics is adding to the maps. You want to be able to combine those two different sources of information, if you like. That's just a screenshot of the results, the geophysics radiometer results. The Hollywood South Cursus is standing out very clearly. When they provided the data to me, they have a series of standard terms that they use to highlight the different anomalies. This is a different data. This is a different set of attributes than we use for the airborne mapping and the field survey data. And it's a stage between the observed, the interpretation of the geophysics results, and then the monument interpretation, which is the next screen, which is we filtered down a lot of the background noise. There's lots of anomalies are featured out, but these are the features that they've identified as monuments in the national record. And then I've applied the CHRoMA legend to display those. And the final screenshot is just bringing it all together. So that's the combined geophysics survey data brought in together along with the existing airborne mapping area. The geophysics data has filled out quite a lot of the area to the west of the Cursus monument. So testing interoperability during the course of the project, Historic England, it was very good timing, released their aerial archaeological mapping data sets and open data. So the Mapping Explorer, this is the Tweed Valley at Horncliffe in Northumberland. And information is indexed, so it's indexed as evidence seen as a crop mark. It does have a monument type somewhere. I don't think it has a screenshot, but it's very much based on the evidence or the form of the monument. That's how Historic England have chosen to present that information, rather than by period or theme. We've had a long-standing aerial survey program, and we've flown the Tweed Valley as well, from the northern side of the Tweed, and we may have occasionally strayed across the border and photographed sites in England. Through the Historic England Mapping Explorer, you're able to drop the shapefile, the Scottish data, into the thing and view it alongside the English data set, but you can't control the attribution, how it displays. That's just an example showing the mapping that we undertook in Scotland and across onto the Northumbrian side. All our survey work is line data. So one of the things that we're not able to do is provide a tone or fill to area shapes. The project hasn't looked at that in a sense, and that's just a combined data set showing the Scottish data alongside the English data. So the idea is it's basically demonstrating the interoperability and the fact that you should be able to move seamlessly across the jurisdictions. As Katie mentioned earlier, that Historic England have chosen to display it by evidence or rather than the theme. So the Historic Environment Scotland Commission, we never recorded things by evidence. We could say they're all crop marks. That's as far as we go. We wouldn't be able to distinguish slope or anything like that. But because Historic England used the fish monuments, the thesaurus, we're able to take the terms in their thesaurus, map them to our categories, and then display the data sets alongside each other seamlessly. A couple of terms that the Historic England use that we don't have, those would need mapping initially. Horncliffe is good for demonstrating the need for interoperability, but we wanted to test on a larger data set. So we looked at Stonehenge and Bedford. This is an example of the Stonehenge area with the aerial mapping from England displayed using the thematic legend from CHRoMA. And it works very well. Where there is a single monument type assigned to the line work. If I scroll to the west up to Winterbourne Stoke with the field systems, some of them are coded up with more than one value. So there's like Lynchett stroke settlement. It would require going in and editing the data to identify and pull out the settlement component of that map landscape and the field system, so to display them through the CHRoMA scheme. Same applies to our own monument data. If we applied the CHRoMA legend to our monument records, we've got multi-term indexing, so it's not easy to work that way. The data really needs to have a single specific. The same also applies to period, prehistoric Roman or Roman. The legends are working best with one single value rather than a date period range. Leads on to period. So we also want to test interoperability in periods. So this is applying the Scottish period thesaurus Scapa, versions of that, key values from that to the airborne mapping at Inverness, Lothian, where we can pull out all the Roman as one period label now, as opposed to in the thematic view where the Roman fort, if it was on the screen, would be shown as a defensive monument, and the field system would be land use. So the thematic view presents one view of the data. The period view presents a temporal view of the data. And again, apply the same scheme on the right, basically on very general period labels. Might have a discussion about the use of Roman, and the Roman period in England is obviously a very different concept in terms of what it's defining than in Scotland. But the general idea is you should be able to apply a legend consistently across any data set. And then the further work is looking at intrusive investigations. This is going back to work I did in 2004, where we mapped the archaeological investigations at Inveresk in advance of a scheduling campaign. That's just a detail of the Cursus monument, the Roman field systems. There's a bit of Roman temporary camps up here. Inveresk bypass went through in 1986 looking for the Roman temporary camp and managed to excavate three ditches of the Cursus monument. So it's again taking the information from the intrusive excavations and bringing that into the overall mapping concept. And that's work I hope to take forward in the next year, part of work on Roman Inveresk. In terms of data structure, everything should have an identifier, local identifier from the researcher, the method, the type of activity, date range, and that date of activity, people involved, organizations, their classifications. As long as the classification used can be mapped to one of the categories in the CHRoMA legend, we can apply the thematic legend. It should have a period. We're very bad in Scotland. I had to assign a lot of the period values retrospectively to the data. Evidence is not something we've collected in Scotland. Everything should have copyright and reuse statements. They should link through to a persistent URL for the relevant site record, whether it's in the national record in Scotland or to the relevant HCRs. There should be a persistent URL for the event, so you can read out more about the specific event, and then the link, a field to apply the thematic or whatever other key you want, and that would be something that the data curator would provide. So just to conclude, main observations are multiple organizations use a range of methodologies, technique, and to record map archaeology, but lacks consistent standards. Data discoverability, I had hoped to draw on data from the commercial archaeological units, both within HES and maybe the ADS archives. I find it very difficult to find primary survey data within project archives. And what is there is difficult to find in the archives, and I do include our own archives in that. It's not indexed as such. It is challenging to find. So I haven't been able to assess whether the attributes are present or not in the data sets. Data interoperability can be addressed through use of standardized terminology or being able to apply those terms to survey data. And the need to rationalize the large number of terms into a set of values suitable for presentation is essential. As I say, for my purposes, the story we want to tell at Inveresk in particular, we have up to 10 values that we want to display. And everything still needs a human eye cast over it and managed by exception. Accessibility side of things, yeah, it does work. It has improved the color legends. And more importantly, it's raised awareness of the issue, I think, and the complexity of the archaeology story and map detail viewed against the background mapping is still going to be challenging. You're already displaying the data against an already rich, optimized map background, as I say. So that's it. So I'd just like to thank the Historic Scotland Foundation for funding the project. It's part of our work contributed to our Equalities Action Plan for 2004, I think it is now. And as I say, Fabio Cremeri undertook the work on the colour science side of the project, and Doug Tudop Binding have helped immensely with the modelling of the data semantically. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter, for that. That was incredibly interesting, and I just have to give the claps as well. Thanks very much. So hopefully we have time for questions. I think we do. Peter, am I right in saying that?
I'm happy to take questions. I don't know how to kill my prompt.
I might, so if anybody's any questions, please raise your hands and we'll go around the room. But I was wondering if I could start the ball rolling, if that's okay. I was just wondering, Peter, what advice would you have for organizations or individuals who wanted to audit basically their own existing maps for accessibility? If there's any advice you can give them on where to start?
I think the color brewer tool is a very good start. As I say, you can take a screenshot and drop it in the website, and you can then see how other people would see the data.
Okay.
So it's quite good. I'll see if I can find the link.
I think I might have just found it there. So that's a really good simulator to use. Okay, perfect. Perfect. That's great. Thank you so much. Dora has a question. Dora, would you like to say it, or would you like? I'm happy to read it out as well. So Dora was asking about times of interpretation for the CHRoMA maps compared to your survey in the thematic maps archives. So she's asking about the interpretation times of the CHRoMA maps compared to your survey in the thematic map archives.
Yeah. So the original data has been archived in our archives and has got an event ID. I hope not all of it does, I know, but they should all have a unique ID. And then the application of the legend is something that we need to cover in the address and the metadata. I think say that it's adding a value to the original data. So we're reusing the data and we're adding an identifier. But that's a good point.
And she was saying as well, it does bring to mind the Mansell Pottery Handbook as well.
Yes.
Katie has a question. Katie?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Peter. It's fascinating seeing it. It's really, really good. And thanks for giving us your time. I was really interested to see, so you showed us, first of all, the presentation in relation to essentially monument type and the collections, these 10 collections that the monument types have all been seriated into. But then also you showed us doing it with period, with some broad period terms.
Yeah.
So do you envisage a situation where somebody could be looking at a data set online and looking at it as symbolized with the monument type collections, and then, as it were, with the flick of a switch, flip to period and look at it that way, sort of to move between them? Like would that be some sort of option? Is that the kind of thing that you would be driving towards, maybe?
I think that would be a good option. I think it was really useful to have the historic England data because you'd a lot of area features, which we'd nothing. So there's something about the ranking of features and the presentations to make sure that the larger features are displayed below the smaller features. And period wise, I think that needs a bit more thought. But yeah, I mean, I think there shouldn't be any reason why you couldn't say this is a view of the landscape thematically or by form or by period. Yeah, so you should be able to switch legends. It depends on who builds the browser for you if you put it on the website.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but no, that's quite a thought. I'll have to go away and mull that over, talk to Simon about it. Great.
Yeah, so I have been talking to Sally about the idea in the past, so she's aware of the project as well, but she hasn't seen the results.
Perfect. Tom, just before, I might just ask a very quick question, then I'll bring you in there. So we've had a couple of questions from Peter, two Peters actually, same namesake, about actually, is your CHRoMA palette available to share as an open source tool rather than people kind of generating their own? Is there any plans to make it available for people?
Yeah, so once the project is written up, the idea is to put the report in Internet Archaeology, and in discussions about where the archive, that's the hard bit, of course, is where does the archive go? so I think I'd be looking to deposit the archive with the ADS as well. And Fabio's certainly very, very supportive of open data from the publications, and he's got a lot of things I don't understand about how to use the legends. So, yeah, there's like Python and things. So he's got, so yeah, the idea, yeah, it's there to be used and reused. That's the whole purpose of it.
Amazing. Peter's a huge advocate of open data, so I'm not surprised by that answer at all. Tom, let's go to you.
Right. I was just going to say, I mean, it's interesting that you were looking at this from a large scale data application, aerial mapping, etc., over large chunks of real estate. We had a similar issue quite a few years ago now when we went over to digital in the trench recording, because basically it's all, there's a map base to the devices that people are actually recording on,
Yeah.
and trying to sort things out, even though we weren't doing it over imagery. So it was just against a sort of white background kind of thing. But we still had to do similar sorts of research. And I don't know how much other companies that are doing in the trench digital recording have had to come to grips with this yet. That, obviously colorability amongst the staff will vary. And you're looking at it on a small device, usually under adverse conditions, bright sunlight, that sort of thing. And trying to find colors, and we wound up, because of what we do, they're closed polygons, there are lines, there are points, etc. We wound up going into a lot of symbology so that the line width was meaningful. The type of fill for a polygon depended on what the nature of the record was, that sort of thing, so that it would work even if you couldn't see the colors. I'm trying to sort of bring it into basically back to the old black and white days of hand drawing stuff in the field on white paper with a pencil, trying to get as much complexity back into it as we could, and usability. But there is a limit when you come to do this, just the sheer amount of different things you want to show. You're talking about showing 10 different attributes when 5 is the recommendation. Is it that we're using too few maps to try and tell too many stories? And should we go back to using more maps, each specifically tailored to 1 or 2 things to show?
So one of the slides I didn't have the period at Bedford where you could pull out, the Neolithic and Bronze Age, present them with all the other crop marks grayed out, or the, highlighting the Iron Age Roman landscape, and then everything else just grayed out. So you could present information by single thing, but for the landscape view, it's very much about the interaction of the different elements of that landscape, like putting out the land use separately from the cultivation. Wouldn't tell you the story that you wanted to tell. It is very much for presentation of a legend. Yes, if you wanted to go into, if you were, I'm just thinking industrial sites or military sites, like a military camp has got all sorts of different functions in there. You would need to develop a legend specific to that category or theme. So the industrial, you might want to pull out the sort of the processing from the storage and things like that. And military, again, airfields, runways separate from the hangars and accommodation, barracks blocks and things. So I'm not saying this is a universal legend for presenting all survey data. It's presenting all survey data for rural landscape in Scotland, essentially. So yeah, I think trying to do it for excavations, again, I'm only interested in pulling out the a very generalized view to tell the story of the features mapped at that excavation on the Inverness bypass. There's obviously much more detail and subtlety within the excavations that require different treatments, and I think if people are able to, the idea is people are able to customize the legends themselves to suit their own needs. And I'm trying to do it with umpteen features from excavations. It's not something that I've looked at or have access to.
Yeah, you have to think long and hard about what it is you want your map to be showing the reader, and then pare it down as much as you can to do so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any other questions anybody would like to ask? We've got some really interesting comments as well. About so yeah, given a number of HRs using the HBSMR software this would be useful to be incorporated as part of the package. Interesting comment there. Katie, you were saying Kent HER starting to use excavation plan polygons for their monument records from the excavation unit or other publications, and it'd be interesting to see what the attributes are as well. Absolutely. Simon has shared a really useful palette. There's an interesting link there, and we're going to be sending out a follow-up email, so we'll include that link as well for people who have attended this talk here today. Yeah, and Dora she understands for every layer of a map, the key is to be quickly accessible, as everybody has their own times of how quickly they can read a map, which is really valid point. Just out of curiosity for myself, do you think it's just, and this is such a minor question, do you think it's better to have a legend within the actual map frame or outside the map frame?
Yeah, the general lack of legends in my screenshots. Yes, that's one of the things that I need to work out with internet archaeology, is how we present a legend alongside the map. I think it would need to be alongside the map.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, the data is viewed to be browsed, you know, so it's not what we've been discussing is having a zoomable image in internet archaeology, so you'd be able to pan and zoom in. So the legend would have to sit beside the map rather than if they're not, because you can move away from where the legend's displaying. Again, it's designed we want to show this information in a web map browser. So again, you'd have the legend. The legend needs to be accessible from the map because you can navigate pan, zoom.
Absolutely.
Courses for courses.
And as in Peter's way, like it'd be great when this palette does come available, that could be something that can be imported into, you know, QGIS or ArcGIS. But of course, those softwares use their different type of style files and things. But at least if the data attribution was consistent underneath, as Peter was saying, the database is consistent, then it's easier to apply the style files.
So we've got the hex codes, which ArcPro allows you to apply a hex code. Arc10 doesn't. It's very infuriating.
Yes, because ArcMap,
QGIS allows you to apply the hex code, so it cuts out the miscade of numbers. But yeah, so there'll be a range of resources that Fabio's created at a sort of conceptual level, available through the thing.
Oh, that's exciting. And are you thinking next year maybe for that, or sooner?
The way things are going next year.
Okay, perfect. That's good. We have something to look forward to in 2026.
I've got 40 plus images I need to write alt text for. It's actually quite challenging.
Oh, we don't envy you that.
And then I need to review all the mappings from the thesaurus monuments back to, and probably the hardest bit is peer review from my survey colleagues to accommodate. The hardest part.
Oh, well, watch this space in 2026. I'm just looking at the time there. So I think what I might do is, I might just wrap this up if that's okay. Only conscious that Peter has another meeting to head along to, if that's okay. Although will we just have time one final question? Peter is asking, will you make your concordance available via ADS? What format will it be useful? I suppose the hex codes, right, should be quite useful in that format.
So the Scottish Monument Thesaurus USW will add the collection to the Monument Thesaurus. That's the work they still have to do, and that'll be available through whatever platform Heritage Data ends up on. We can make a static Excel file, I guess, as well, available through the archive. That's not a bad thing.
Sounds great. Perfect. Thank you so much, Peter, for being our first speaker as part of our new DigITea series. This has been very exciting. We had a great turnout today, and thank you all so much for coming. And my sincere thanks to Peter from me and the committee as well for being our speaker today. This is really, really interesting. So thank you so much. I'm just going to, I'll pass this over to Cara, but I just want to include in the chat there that this is the first of our new DigITea series. So I've just shared a link in the chat there about how you can sign up for more information. There, we have the link open to register for our talk next month, which is by Tom Flynn on standards in 3D data. And on the link as well is where you can join our group on LinkedIn groups, and we also have a Blue Sky account to follow for more information. So again, my thanks to you all for coming here today, and sincere thanks again, Peter, for such a fascinating talk. And you've definitely made me want to go check all the maps I've ever created now for colour accessibility.